I'm Garbhan Sheridan, co-creator of Rated B for Bastard, and this is the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Garbhan Sheridan about his new comic collection, Rated B for Bastard, published by Inservice Comics. Based in Toronto, Ontario, Garbhan Sheridan is a writer and creator of Alternative Pulp, a series of zines that twists and mixes tropes, traditions, and folklore into fresh oddities via flash fiction and short stories. His latest project collects his comic strips, illustrated by Nicholas Friesen, published by Inservice Comics. Rated B for Bastard is a collection of comic strips featuring the story of two troublesome foster brothers in a nameless city. Cuchulainn, a volatile, over-the-top teenage boy, shares his escapades and adventures in friendship with his foster brother, Ferdiad. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Garbhan Sheridan about his new comic collection, Rated B for Bastard, published by Inservice Comics. So, Garbhan Sheridan, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I appreciate your time. Before I get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
So it was probably something like an Animaniacs comic book or something in like the mid-90s, or The Simpsons. Like those would be the things I would have been picking up as like a small child. And Calvin and Hobbes would have been the first thing that I was devoted to reading.
Absolutely.
All the Calvin and Hobbes.
Those are great stuff growing up. Very inspirational and influential. But I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
Today, as far as comic books, so like my gateway into comic books would have been TMNT, like into seriously reading and collecting comic books. Anything you learn through that, you learn all about Jack Kirby when you learn about TMNT. So I've read all that, New Gods, stuff like that. And, Elf Quest, Stan Sakai, Usagi Yojimbo. So those are the kind of things that got me excited about reading and collecting comics, like as an adult. And as far as the project that we're talking about today, recently, last year, I got into Carl Barks Duck Comics. I don't know if you've read any of those.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so there was a stretch of time where that was all I was reading at all, and I just fell in love with it. And first I was like, because you hear about it, and I just thought, I'm not going to read that. It's Donald Duck, but it's like legendary comics. So I started buying all those Fantagraphics Carl Barks library books, and I just dove into them. And that is what I was reading the whole time I wrote this book that we're talking about today, Rated B for Bastard. So that was a big influence on how I was writing and thinking about writing a script.
Ah, very good. Well, you mentioned the topic of today's discussion, which is your graphic novel, Rated B for Bastard. I could talk a little bit about the story. What is it all about?
It is a collection of strips that I did with Nicholas Friesen, who is also publishing this with me. He is the artist on it. I'm the writer. It is about two sort of troublesome foster brothers in a kind of I don't know what city or what time they live in. It's just kind of an unnamed place. It is about their sort of mischief and friendship. It's based on my own writing, because I do a series of zines called Alternative Pulp. Those are about Cuchulainn, a character named Cuchulainn, who is kind of a volatile, over-the-top teenage boy. This strips that I've written are sort of a prequel to his teenage years as like a young boy and his foster brother, Ferdiad. I would say that Ferdiad is kind of like the straight man to Cuchulainn, who's something of a lunatic of a character. But Ferdiad has his problems as well. each strip is fairly self-contained, but like it works out as one long story as well. So I would really call it a graphic novel, its own world for sure.
And because they're youngsters, they tend to get into all sorts of different situations and antics. And one seems to be a little bit more mature, let's say, than the other, would you say? Is that how it works out?
That's Ferdiad. Yeah, he's a few years older, and Cuchulainn is. When you say that, I would actually say Cuchulainn is a little more mature in his mind, but he behaves more chaotically. Cuchulainn is sort of like more of the brains of the operation, but Ferdiad sort of cools him down when he can. So I call him like the straight man, but somebody has to be, you know. The idea was to have like because I mentioned Calvin and Hobbes, so obviously that was sort of in my mind when I was making this, because it's the only comic strip that I've ever read, like I've ever been committed to reading.
What was your inspiration for your book? Are there any personal stories that you've injected into it?
Not really. There's a long evolution of this character of Cuchulainn. I've been writing about him for 10 years as a teenager. It comes from times in my life that were troubled. I sort of created something humorous for myself, you know, to create. And I wanted something chaotic because life can be chaotic, but it's also amusing at times.
Right. That's life.
Yeah. But as far as like the actual episodes of like the things that happen to them, I wouldn't say any of that's really based on me. Not really. But the kind of mischief that they get into and their attitude is definitely from like a love of, you know, the kind of antics that kids get into, particularly boys, and characters like in the tradition of Bart Simpson or Dennis the Menace or something like that. Like I liked stuff like that as a kid. I liked other kids like that. It entertains me.
Is there any type of message that you hope that readers take away after reading it, or is just like, here's some antics of these crazy kids? Perhaps there's something that goes beyond it.
A message? Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Yes. I do want to communicate that these two little bastards, because as they're called, they are friends and they have hearts and they do love each other and want to protect each other. That would be a very vague and subtle message, but it's there. I don't know if so much a message, but I want it to have some heart throughout the book. Yeah, again, like the way, the kind of childhood spirit, you know, I want that to be communicated through it as well, even if they might be a little over the top.
Right. Well, you mentioned your collaborator on the book, Nicholas Friesen. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the creative process. How did you two work together on this project?
Well, there would be no project without Nick. Like I said, I've written about these characters in like my zines and like as like short stories. And I had the idea to write, like I said, like a prequel of them as children. And that was all it was going to be. It was just going to be, you know, some short stories. But Nick, last year or the year before, I think it was last year, he did a series of strips himself called New Ghosts. A lot of it was about these kids, sort of sweet, mostly innocent kids, but in very dark and disturbing, sometimes like apocalyptic situations. I haven't seen a lot of that, and certainly not in like a simple way. So I read all that. I've been talking to him for a while. We met last year when he came to TCAF in person. So he lives in Winnipeg. I live in Toronto. After I read those strips, I thought, you know, I mean, it would be cool if he could help me with this idea. You know, you don't get what you don't ask for. So I kind of worked up a bit of courage and I asked him if he would be interested. And he was, you know, after he read the pitch and the scripts. So I wrote all the scripts first. Like we didn't do them one by one. I wrote 3 scripts for the first 3 strips. Like, so they're all in order in the way I wrote them, mostly. I wrote 3 scripts as a pitch. And then he said, like, we should do a full book and there are 19 strips total in the book. They're all about a page. Some of them are 2 pages. I write them all. I sent them to him maybe 3 or 4 at a time just to see that he liked them. And that took about a month and a half, maybe less. And then Nick takes them and essentially edits them as well. So he tweaks things and adds things of his own. Basically, I do my job, he does his job. He definitely injects a lot of visuals that I did not plan, like any of the like action sequences or whatever, like the descriptions of what to be drawn. I do write that, but those are pretty basic things. He adds a lot of sort of fanfare and things that are needed or that help, and a little extra dialogue as well, like a little bit. It's collaborative in the way that we're each pitching in, but it's not happening at the same time, you know?
Right. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the strip and dig into that. Typically, most people
of course,
find that kind of limiting, but sometimes it's only like 4 panels, sometimes 3. Did you find any sort of fluid nature to it, or did you try to say, hey, I'm only doing this number of panels for this strip, and then I'll move on to the next one? How did that work?
I was pretty limited. I was pretty strict with how I did that. Foolishly, I did them all. I said that he edited everything. And a lot of that was because I made them all 10 panels because I wasn't really thinking like aesthetically, because like a 10 panel grid does not really look good or exist. Like people don't do that. But for some reason in my mind, I thought that was perfect and fine. So I wrote so many of them as just 10 panels, and I did my best to fit everything into 10 panel scripts. And I liked that. Like it was good. It was a good exercise in kind of economy of words and just keeping the jokes tight and the gags like paced well. I kind of wanted to be a little limited. Otherwise, I could just go on and maybe waste people's time because I'm having too much fun. And the way I write a lot of my own short stories, like they're really just like flash fiction stories. So I'll have like 30-page zine and each story will only be a page or 2. So I'm used to writing short things with kind of like a little buildup and like an abrupt ending. I like creating like that. So it seemed to work. And like I said, I did them all 10 panels. And then I noticed they were coming out 9 or 12. And I realized, like, does that make sense, right? For a page size, a grid. So I did kind of go back and like edit them a little more to shrink them down to 9 or 8 panels, which again, like felt good because editing is part of writing. So I was happy to go back and fix it and make it even tighter. And a lot of them were really improved by Nick, but also when I redid some of them as well, like just by shrinking them down.
Now, you mentioned the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. That's where you met up with Nicholas. I'm wondering, what are you looking forward to most for this year's TCAF?
This is my first comic book experiment work at all. So just having it on a table will be amazing. All the in-service comics, which is Nick's, well, he called it a micro publisher. Micro press is what he used to call it, but I believe he's branching out. So I think we're going to call it a small press now. He is releasing, I think, 8 books from maybe 7 creators, including himself, something like that. And so he will have a table for in-service, and there are a number of us are from Toronto, and we will have a party, like a launch party. It feels surreal to be part of something like that. Like everybody's releasing they're doing autobiographical comics, some of them, and I'm just excited to read everybody's work, that will be under the same publisher as me, as it just feels just brand new territory for me to be involved in something like that and to have my name on a list of creators like that. I always get way too many things at TCAF or like a zine fair or wherever I go. So I'm looking forward to my haul and whatever I find. I'm going to make sure to take some time off so I can spend a little more time there, and maybe I'll see some more like panels or events at the actual festival, because usually I just kind of go in and spin around the whole place and buy as much as I possibly can and leave.
Yeah, there's a lot there, that's for sure.
It's easy to spend all your money.
Yes, that's true. Well, we've been talking about Rated B is for Bastard. I'm wondering if you talk about your next project, or is it too early to say right now?
It's a little too early to say. Again, this is my first time writing a comic strip. I would love to do more of this. I will say, like, we released half of this book online, like each strip every week in the winter. So technically, the next project is the second half of the book, which I don't think you haven't read either, because I sent you a preview. And
which was pretty interesting. Thank you for sending that. Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you for reading it. The second half will be online in the fall. So technically, that is the next thing, slated to come out. The book itself will be printed in June. I have nothing like set in stone as far as writing comics. I would love to do it again. I will, if I can. I write a lot of other stories about this character. So I have a Wizard of Oz project that I'm working on, kind of like a take on the Wizard of Oz, which I'm slowly finishing and editing as well. And on my website, I'm always adding new stories, alternativepulp.com, where you can read half the strip as well. Also, I'm making a zine of a bunch of different creators that I have come into contact with on Instagram, online, for the zine community, friends of mine, family, called Mania. Nick is also involved in that, which I'm proud to have him as a part of that. I would say the big project for me, the big focus for me now is promoting this comic and getting a good audience. I don't necessarily want the biggest audience, but I want people to appreciate it.
So you're going to be at TCAF promoting your book. Do you have any other events or festivals planned for later this year for promotion?
I do not. Not myself. Nick will be with Inservice. Like, he will be selling the book as well. TCAF Prairie Comics Festival.
That's coming up in the fall. Yeah,
that's coming. So that'll be there. So the book will be there. And yeah, I have to promote myself as well, though. So, probably some zine festivals in Toronto, if I can get into those. But no, I do not.
Okay. Well, perhaps you could let people know where they should look for your future events online and your future projects. Where should they be looking for you online?
Alternativepulp.com and Alternative Pulp, all one word, on Instagram would be the best places to find me. Alternativepulp.com is just a series of my stories and the strip right now. I'm always trying to think of ways to tweak it and improve it. I have a friend who does some web building and web design, so I think it's a pretty beautiful site for what it is. I always post the updates on my Instagram as well. So anytime I put a new story or a new strip up, it's there. Alternative Pulp would be the key word.
Very good. Well, Garbhan, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you want to get across in this interview?
I'm just very excited. I'm actually very proud of these strips. Like I said, there's the second half still to come out, and I'm thrilled with what I've seen of that as well. And I'm very grateful to Nick for taking this project on with me. I want people to read it. This is a new chapter for me, so I'm proud of it and excited to be part of a community of creators, comics.
Thanks to Garbhan for the chat. You can discover more about Garbhan Sheridan online at alternativepulp.com and on Instagram at alternativepulp. You can check out Rated B for Bastard on Inservice Comics. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators about making comic books and graphic novels. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media platforms. And you can send any and all feedback to john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2026.